Hello?
Hi, Troy. So probably we can start now. Are we waiting for someone else? It's probably so. Let's start. So if you are not in the dairy, if you don't expect dairy presentation, you are probably in the wrong room or in the wrong session. It's time to leave and catch up with the other session. Um, so let's move on to the agenda for today. Um, before, I mean, yeah, it's a second session, so you might have not read the note well, but I suppose you're familiar with that. If you have any questions, let us know. Next slide. So personal participation, make sure you're signing into the session. Um, when you want to go to the queue, make sure you indicate that through the through Meet Echo.
Hello?
And a remote participant, make sure you mute yourself when you are not talking. Of course, unmute when you are talking. Next slide. Regarding the mask policy. Oh, louder. Regarding the mask policy, we have been asked to just remind everyone that you have to wear the mask, except when you're talking at this mic. The reason is that we expect to have a certain distance between the speaker and the remaining of the group. So this mic, you should keep your mask. So today is well, you can see on the slide if you have further, you need further information to run the session, but I suggest we just go to the agenda. So the first thing, the document status. We have two documents that are in ISG review. This is our ID. I'm wondering if maybe our AD has anything to say around those drafts.
So Eric Venk, indeed, the AD for DRIP. Nothing really to say. Everything is information is public. One has got one discuss, and the other one has got still two discuss that are blocking, so they need to be solved. Uh, the only issue that sometimes it takes time, because not only the authors need to provide answers or revised ID, but also the AD with blocking needs to remove his block. So the earlier you provide feedback, the better. And for instance, one which is very good at this is his med. He replies within hours, which is pretty good.
Yeah, so one of the reasons is when you review documents, if you don't have fast response, you lose the context. So yeah, I would suggest a 24-hour slot before real responses. Then, and I think that's going to be the meat of the work today. That's the, oh no, we have two. I mean, we have dessert and main course. The auth draft. So this is a working group last call. We are waiting for two additional reviews, which is OBS and Gen Auth. It would be good that we got those, but we can't do anything at that point regarding that. We have two issues regarding those drafts. One concerns the number of reviews, and the other is the allocation of that needs to be provided by ICAO. So milestone, I'm sure we are in line with everything we predicted, but we should speed up to not extend that. So the agenda. So so I suggest. Oh, Stu. Oh, no, that's right. Shrai. Do you want to present the ARC? Shwai, can you hear us? If not, I suspect. So Shwai, when you're ready, let us know. I hope you hear us. In the meantime, I suggest that Bob present a writing.
Can you please bring my slides up?
Hello.
Oh,
Okay,
We'll get back to you, Shwai. Won't take me long for mine.
that's fine. You can hear me though, right? I'm just checking my
Yeah,
audio.
Yeah.
we hear you now. That's good.
Okay,
That's good.
perfect.
Okay, so we're now up to, please go to the first slide, next slide. We have gone from, at the last IETF, we were at version 17, we're now version 31. So there've been a lot of iterations, and as Roman told me long ago, versions are free. So just set out the next version, make some changes, put out the next version, make some changes, just keep it rolling so people can see what you have. So there's a lot of text improvements and a lot of people, Med, Eric, ISG, IANA, we've really richened the text, which is in there, but there's been no design changes, no technical changes. From 17 to 31, we have not changed the design of the DRIP RID. And that's all been static. The ISG reviewed version 29. So if you want to compare, you go 29 to 31, what changes have been made since the ISG comments, what still needs to be done. 31, I just posted this morning. I did have problems because they broke the submit yet again. And so I had to, instead of using one of the includes, I had to put the stuff directly in the XML, but they're going to fix it anyway. So 31 was just posted, and mostly that was IANA changes, cleaning up some comments there about IANA, and both Murray and IANA are happy with the text I have there. So hopefully that'll clear Murray's comment with what I've done there in 31 in the IANA considerations. There has been brought up that we use the term registrar. And this is more coming to conversations with the registries draft, but it just feeds all the way up, back up the chain. This is problematic because registrar has a specific meaning, the IETF, and we'll need, and we best drop this term because what we have is not an ICANN registrar. We have something else here. So we need a different label so we don't get the semantic clash. What I'm proposing is DRIP registration agency. Or somebody got any better ideas? We'll take it to the list, please. Oh, here comes Adam. Adam is going to give us a better idea.
Adam Whitaker. So I'm going to go more into detail on this in my presentation. So if we hold comments or anything to mine, because we're going to have a nice long discussion, I hope, during my slot on this. But thank you for the primer, Bob.
Right. So this is, again, that one of the things we were talking more about is that terminology we use. We're trying to get broader matching up with how IETFers think about these words so we don't get clash, and also people outside will know what we're talking about as well. So that's that point. Next slide.
Yeah, just one clarification. You remember that we have a lot of discussion with the IEG about the whether the DNS is part of the scope of the RID and so on. So my fear here is that should we overload the RID specification with all this consideration, or we just get those out of the RID specification and defer, I would say, the required clarification to the registrar.
Right.
If that is the plan, I think that's the right, at least for my point of view, that's the right way to go.
Right. That is the plan. We're not going to, which gets my next slide. Great feeding. There's lots of cans we're kicking down the road to open registries. And we need to decide if we need to kick any of those back up. And to the most part, no. We need to, as much as possible, say that RID and ARC are done. and we intentionally kick these things down the road because they belong in auth, they belong in registries, and that's where they go. But to look at these things, and for instance, the UA's DET, HDA, registration attestation and DNS as alternative to DNSSEC, we've had a tremendous discussion about this in the past 36 hours and how we're going to be doing this, so that there will be more coming on that. And another thing that Adam will be getting to is that we mentioned EPP in ARC and in RID. But now that they've actually been doing some coding, they're saying that it's really not, well, I'll leave that for Adam to explain what the changes here on this particular point, but this might be, again, wording which feeds back up, because now we have coding experience, and we're just in the point in time that all we're doing is changing the label, not changing the intent. So these are particular open items which will feed back up, but they're really just changing the label to get the semantics right. Next. And or leave sleeping dogs lie, because DRIP registries is still fluid, and we just had yet another discussion just the past half hour ago about registries. So again, it's still fluid, but again, the terminology, we're pretty much in agreement there. What's the intent? I think we can do that and move forward on it and not make any changes and let those sleeping dogs lie as they are. Next. So we need talk to ISG this week on remaining concerns. I've been cornering a couple of them, and that's my intent this week as much as possible to have one-on-one with each of the players and get anything open settled so we can do this. I've been talking to Paul Woder about what we're doing with IPsec key and what we're going to do about that, and what IPsec workgroup may do about that. But I'm trying to take each item as it stands, get with that AD and see that these items are directions resolved, and then for me to do the text and get a version and update the draft accordingly. And anytime I get one resolved, I'm going to get that draft out. I'm not going to wait till I get everything together. My attitude is that revisions are free, and just every time I get one settled, you'll see that draft posted with that resolution as I do them, because I want to keep this turning around, as you said, Eric, that we want to keep it fresh in their minds, and then you want to keep it fresh in their minds, the discussions, and not let it drift away with all the other concerns everybody has. So watch for regular updates with everything else I'm doing. As I resolve each item, I will release that draft version out. That's all I have to say. We're in the final stages of this, and I'm going to keep this thing going and do the diffs. Now, what did Bob change this time? Or do the diffs from back that version to that version? What are the collection of changes he's made? Does he step on himself on anything? But that's it. I'm feeling really good about this, that I am on the down to the final pieces on it. And we can say this piece is done, and we can look beyond to other items in the work group.
Thank you, Bob.
So just a question. Do we expect all the issue being solved by the end of the week?
Direction on all of them.
Okay.
I don't expect, I may get one update out, but it's going to be next week I'll be doing the writing, because there's just too much going in my head right now
Okay.
for me to do serious heads down writing this week. Now, if you see,
Okay.
if you see where I
In
have,
2 weeks.
yeah, if you see where I have commitments and other sessions or presentations and other important things for us, not this week, next week.
Okay. Next week is fine. Same week. So Shuai, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me though?
Yeah, we hear you.
Perfect. All right. Thanks. So here's the update for the DRIP architecture IES review summary. Let's go next slide, please.
You have the controls, so you can control them directly, Shuai.
I have the controls. It's not working. Okay. All right. Perfect. Getting better. So we received 11 reviews, and I had 1 discussion and 10 no objections. So thanks for the detailed review. And among these 11 reviews, most editorial and text clarifications. And some of the discussions are focused on the improvement of the DRIP architecture diagram, which is the figure 4. So for that, in the past, we're trying to align the DRIP architecture and the DRIP requirement, which is now RFC 90153. We're trying to align with the terminology usage and the overall system design. So that was really, I would say, half a year ago. Now, which left the problem that some of the terminology was not mentioned in the DRIP context. So people are complaining that. And also there are comments regarding if we should update the diagram to reflect the crowdsource ideas Bob has, which is for that we were not even putting on the draft. So this is, I believe those has been cleared in the mailing list unless we have another comments from there. Then we also have comments for the problem caused because of the audit reference to the new read draft, and also the ESTM documents. Then we have lots of security discussions from Roman, which is Bob has been replied, and I'm not going to technical details there. I'm really not the security expert, but I believe the discussion will probably could continue going on from the mailing list if Roman has more concerns. All right. So this is the next slide. Can you see that? Okay, so as of yesterday, we uploaded revision 25, which should have include all the fixes we have proposed in the mailing list. We have lots of discussion going on, and reply. So in revision 25, we sent the fixed summary to each of the reviewers already. I believe they should have, but I don't think they have time to look at it during the IETF week. So we're waiting for the response from the reviewers. Here is only some of the examples of particular problems, like we are using wrong reference to HHIT instead of using the read. So we did update for that. Then the rest is mostly the discussion from Roman regarding the securities. As I mentioned, that's still going on in the mailing list. Hopefully that will be clarifying all of the Roman's comments. All right, next slide. So this is the fix from in the 25 revision regarding the figures. So as I mentioned in the past, we, at least in the working group level, we all agreed that we're not going to repeat things happening in the requirement draft. We're not going to repeat them in the architecture. Since the people are complaining, the current solution we have proposed is actually just to add a informative note that if we want to see the definition for the new term, which is not in the architecture draft, just go back to reference the RFC 90153. I'm not sure because I haven't heard any feedback yet regarding from the mailing list, but I think that's Bob's idea. Just put a reference there. Just if people want to know where that's coming from, that should clarify. We also there's a new reference from ESTM F341112A, which is really has the new read type 4 we needed for the DRIP. So that's had been updated. Then edited the clarification text for the math calculations and informed reference to the authentication and restitution text. So that's already fixed.
There's a typo in your slide. It's update reference for F3411-22A.
22A. That's the typo. Okay. All right. That should be fixed in the next review. So. Next up, so we still have a little bit of many discussion among authors, but nothing concerned with ISHG review. So as far as we're concerned from the authors, most if not all the comments is being addressed. So we encourage all the reviewers go ahead to review the difference for the new revision 25. Do let us know if there's anything wrong. So the plan is we're gonna if there's no more comments from the working group or the ISHG, we're planning to had another revision 26. I would say in 2 weeks. I think that's reasonable, right? To kind of close it. Oh, sorry, I should move to the next slide. That's all. Cheers.
Okay, great. So we expect this document to be shipped in 2 weeks.
If others agree, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Shwai. Stu here.
Yes, dude.
First, I want to publicly thank you for taking over as editor and handling the many issues, most of them small and editorial, but some of them significant that were raised by IESG and others. There's absolutely no way I could have kept up in these last 6 months, and so thank you very much for doing it. Just so everybody knows, since there were a number of tweaks that you needed to make in response to various IESG comments, et cetera, Adam and I did what we hoped would be a final review of the revised document while we were on the train down, I think. And we caught a number of little things that we brought to your attention. But as far as we can see, it is essentially ready to rock.
Perfect.
Thank you. Adam?
Why is Bob so short? Anyway, all right, so I'm going to go through this really quick. So this is the authentication protocols. Next slide, please. So as Daniel and Med mentioned earlier, there's one open issue item. It's from ICAO. So in F341122A, the specific authentication method codes are allocated and assigned by ICAO. This was the process that was made between ASTM and them. There should be a process for ICAO to do it. Bob helped formulate that process for ICAO, but I don't know the status of it. If it's up, they're accepting entries. So I'm going to make a process to get to F3411 working group and poke and see who I need to talk to in ICAO to at least informally get the process started. But we probably need an IETF liaison to do it. And I don't know if we have one officially, so we probably want to start that process. So that will probably involve Eric. And it is a circular dependency. We can't publish the draft without numbers, and they can't review the draft. They can't give us a number without reviewing the draft.
So regarding the IETF liaison,
Mhm.
We will not get a long-term relationship with ICAO, most probably, so we don't need to get a liaison person, right? But a liaison statement, so asking to ICAO something and expecting an answer, is basically the chair's duty.
Got it.
Right.
Cool.
So this is Eric talking, and now it's Bob. So just
And
remember.
the person at ICAO, I've spoke with him before, and he's the one who manages the CTA manufacturer code. I just have to remind him that you did commit to putting this page up. Please do it. And it's just get their. They've been going through reorg there. So now it's a matter of getting their attention, and we'll do that next week because the Trusted Framework Panel chair will be back in the office next week, I've been told. So
Excellent.
that's on schedule for next week to get that done. Thank you for the reminder about that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, okay,
I mean, it is ASTM's job to do. We will do it for them.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, so this is just for the working group. I don't know if you are following this document deeply, but there is a dependency on the code allocation. So we cannot progress this document if there is no formal registry in the ICAO. So this is really fundamental for us. If there is no sufficient progress from the ICAO, I think that we need to figure out how to make progress and find on other plans. But this is important.
Correct. Yeah. Rob, Seegers, did you wanted to say something? I know I saw you in queue and then you appeared and then disappeared. I let him because he.
I realize that Bob already had it with Salo at ICAO.
Okay.
But what I want to say is I'm with the FAA, I'm also on the communication panel. And I saw in your slides that you're also looking for the OITARC and the DNS entry. And that's something that is managed by the communication panel.
Okay.
And I'm propose that one of you, together with me, put together a working paper, very short one, requesting what you need. And we can take it to the communication panel meeting, which will be in September, if that's soon enough for you, and get it onto record. And also, there will be then an opportunity to get it adopted, which means that it makes part of the documentation and makes it official.
Cool. All right, noted. I will touch base with you later.
So September will be, when we send a query, do you know when we can get a response? Is that during the meeting or?
It's during the meeting.
Okay, right.
What you basically do is you put up a working paper, you submit it ahead of the meeting, then the meeting has an opportunity to review it ahead of time, gets discussed as part of the agenda, and then it puts it in the minutes of the meeting, which makes it official.
Okay, right. So that's perfect timing.
All right, next slide, please. Right, so just high-level draft status. So I've also had a lot of changes, 10 in total, because I am now in the mantra with Bob, versions are free. So there was a lot of reordering of sections due to Bob's comments and first, I think, ever full read of the document. And so a lot of sections were reordered, restructured. Section 6 was a massive one that got restructured, not content-wise, but just headers and where things were stated to make things flow better. And then a lot of explanation text was added in places. So next steps, well, I think the technical side is ready. We're just waiting on the ICAO SAM code and reviews. I'm going to be sending the document to F3411 working group to get some reviews, but we also need some other reviews. So hopefully people can raise their hands. We can get some people on this side, up to 3, to review the document before we move to the next step.
And so in the room, I'd like to see if anyone has read the document or can commit to review the document. Commit.
Okay, so Rob Seegers.
Anyone else?
Anyone in chat as well?
You-
If anyone's
you-
watching the chat window.
Okay.
Ashley,
Ashley,
okay.
thank you.
Rob, Ashley, thank you.
One more. Wait. You don't need to look at your screen now.
Yeah, this is basically important for us to show that there is interest from the working group and that we are confident that the content is really reflecting what we think about this scope of this document. We as chairs, we have reviewed this document several times, but we are doing this as a courtesy for the authors, but we need the participants to do this job. So please, this will just take you, I would say, 1 or 2 hours to understand the context. Raise any issues that have in the document so that the authors knows that what they have recorded in the document is easily understood by the others and there are no major flaws in the document. So 1 more reviewers and we can move forward. If we don't have one, we will stop here.
Okay, so next slide, I guess.
We will need 1 more.
Oh, 1 more,
reviewer,
so.
please.
Anyone virtual or in person?
And also on the, I would say on the remote. Shuai or
Yeah,
Andre,
virtual.
if you can also volunteer, that will be really cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Trey.
Maybe having audio difficulties.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Shuai committed.
No.
No,
Do you want to review?
he is going to review.
You-
Probably.
yeah,
He
your-
probably is.
Yeah, your
But
name,
is it-
please, so that we can record that in the minutes, please. You can come to the mic and see your name, please. Thank you. Yeah, please.
All right, so my name is Fred Kwajo Azori from Ghana, and I would like to review.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. That's what I appreciate.
Thank you very much.
So we have 4 reviewers right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plus whatever comes from
Thanks.
F3411. All right, so next slide. All right, so we're going to get into the meat of my discussion for the rest of this thing, which I think is a half an hour. Oh dear. Okay, so I'm going to go through this in a couple of stages. So I'm going to go all the way through the slides, and then we'll go back and do discussion. So next slide, please. All right, so changes from 01 to 05. I closed all of the items from 113. The contributors fix. Andre's text is now in an appendix. There's RAA HDA text that we pulled from UASRID that Bob helped wordsmith, and then the title change that I had proposed. New items were also added. The ICAO DNS structure was added. Thanks from Bob for bringing it in to bring some understanding. Cert OIDs, some improved EPP from Len Bales from Info Networks, because he reviewed it and did some modifications as we were trying to do some interop work. And then X509 certificates from Bob, which is still somewhat of a stub, but he has intentions to make it more full. Next slide. So these are my working items. Next slide. So the cert OIDs, this is not in the current version, but it's going to be in the next one that gets pushed literally probably tomorrow. We're using Bob's personal OID at the moment. We probably want to allocate one for the working group. It's using the second value in it, and then we have values for the format and the entity type to build something. So you can see an example here for a broadcast attestation, so that these can be put in cert records into DNS. Next slide. So this is the DNS structure. We're probably going to come back to this slide again, but we should try to have all DRIPs work fit within this DNS structure. That is, I think, the proposal that at least Bob has had. And it ties a little bit into mailing list discussions of the use of .arpa from Jim Reed and some others that have been throwing it around. But effectively, uas.icao.int or something would be our root. That image is a little bit older based on understanding that I've had in the past 36 hours. Next slide. I'm going to add some RAA allocation clarifications that came up during the hackathon due to endpoints. So basically, RAAs we are expecting them to be CAAs, but they could be other things. And they use an HDA value of 0, so they're part of the hierarchy. If a CAA wants to do other interactions besides just registering HDAs, they would stand up an HDA under themselves because they have the HDA space to allocate to whoever they want. So they'll just probably use one. And I'm wondering if we should just use and put that right in the draft. And the RA value one is special going towards the manufacturer side. Next slide. All right, so this is our big discussion items. So I'm going to go a little slower here. So first off, we're inter-document dependencies. So Info Networks is a huge help here. They were the first ones to come to us and were like, hey, we'd like to try to do an interop demonstration with AX Enterprise. And a lot of AX's work is closed source, so we can't release it publicly, but they wanted to try to interact with us. And it was very hard for them coming in from the registry document to find the flow. How does the DET work? How do you build it? Why are we building it? Why is it built this way? Why are we using DNS in this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It took over 20 plus Zoom hours on my personal part over the course of a week to get one person up to speed so that he actually had his head on straight so we could actually have somewhat more technically meaningful discussions. And that's worrisome, I think. So now I'm going to make more direct effort to ensure that that doesn't happen again, because 20 hours is a lot of my time, even though I'd be willing to do it with anybody who wants to. I am a very personable person. I'm very friendly. Personable person. I'm great. So there was that, and I think we should put that into the whole working group so we have a good context overall, because sometimes we lose the forest amongst the trees, if that's the way the phrase goes. Next slide, please. So Bob touched on this. This is the term registrar. So this came from Info Networks as we were interoping. Once they got past the 20 plus hours of discussion, this was the first question that actually came up from them. They're like, we understand why you're using the word registrar. You're doing functions like a registrar, but do you really want to be a registrar? Because there are a lot of processes and regulations on the registrar operator that get levied. And our use case in DRIP, that could be prohibitive and slow or impede adoption. For, at least in the United States, and what we've been thinking, we are targeting USS vendors in UTM, UAS service suppliers. They probably don't want to play the game of trying to become a registrar. I'm not sure, but it could slow the adoption down. And Info Networks argued that this potentially is the thing we would want to try to avoid. So in short, registrar is not the right word, but it's the right thing. It's the right function, but we don't want to call it a registrar, so we don't bring some other entities in to bring process and flow. So we need a different term. Bob has proposed a term. I have proposed a term, DRIP Provisioning Agency, with Tim Mesker from Info Networks. Stu has proposed something in UTM framework, which has its own overloaded terms. So we want to avoid that landmine too. And this will affect the DRIP architecture, as Bob mentioned. Not so much in that we're going to change too much. It's just that wherever the term registrar is, we want to replace it with the one we choose, and then have a definition at the top that says what basically describes a registrar, but then doesn't call it a registrar. I see Stu standing at the line. I will let you go really fast because that's breaking my protocol.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little clarity to what Adam is saying. I'm in favor of calling a thing what it is, right? And what this thing is in the generic sense of the word, a registrar. And it is actually registering a domain, but it is not registering a second level domain like example.com. And so that raises two issues. When you register a second level domain, the registrar and the registry operator each have to pony up money with that. A single UAS operator might fly 10 missions in a day. Each one of these operations would get its own session ID. So that one operator's one aircraft would have to pay, or the registrar and the registry operator would have to pay for 10 registrations, right? And while I'm sure ICANN would be thrilled about this, it's economically infeasible, right? An aircraft operator is not going to be willing to step up to the cash register each time he registers a session ID for a single operation. And then the other issue is for a USS, which is operated by a company that's primarily focused on aviation issues, being an ICANN accredited registrar is just outside of the scope of their business. So that's why we need to redefine and rename the term.
Thanks for the clarifications too. So we'll come back to this probably if other people have comments. So next slide, or Rob.
Are you taking the mic?
Yeah, go to the mic, please.
Are you taking suggestions for your name?
Sure.
Demo.
DMO?
DIMO.
Demo.
DRIP ID Management Organization.
Stu, write that down.
It's in the minutes.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. All right, so this is a diagram that people probably here can't see, but maybe online they can see better. This is the product of the 20 plus hours of discussions with Tim Mesker that I had to go through. And this was our attempt to fix the problem with the term registrar, not only in the sense of the wording, but also technically how do we write it into the document and structure the document accordingly. So next slide. So there's a couple different parts. This is the DRIP provisioning agent name to be determined. It might change, but basically it's a logical entity that handles as the user interaction point for registering a DAT session ID or a session ID in general. And it handles all the DRIP-based logic, such as the cryptographic operations, creating the attestations and the certificates in response, or parsing the ones that came in, the validation of the debt, and making sure that it's not already taken, and the generation of at least the resource record contents. And the resource records must be put in DNS, because where else would you put them? And if the name server is not co-located, we want to specify some not protocols, but interactions between them. And we've chosen Open API and EPP. And if it's not if it is co-located, well, then it's out of scope for our documents because you're going to build your DRIP provisioning agent talking to the name server you're talking to. They're on the same box. You're probably using SQL because it's a database, or files if it's bind. So not really our problem. Next slide, please. Now there's the counter to this, the DRIP information agent. This is the entity that gets queried by a user or a lookup for lookups of private data via the session ID as the key. And it has to use a differentiated access mechanism of some kind. So DRIP standardized RDAP in this capacity. And there's an RDDS, a registration data directory service in the back end. Some of these terms are a little bit still hazy to me, so I'm sorry if I'm using them a bit wrong. Next slide. So with all this said, myself and Tim Bresker from Info Networks are proposing a new document structure. The first thing is that the current registry draft becomes a architecture for debt-based registries. And it just contains the high-level architecture, the slide you saw previously with the image, and description, the last two slides, of components as a selection. The list of the resource records and reasoning why we're using them, and the definitions of any objects we are sending, attestations and certificates. And then we would spawn new documents for the interfaces between the varying parts, standardizing what we can. In particular, there's an interface between the DPA and the registry. And we would have two documents spawned for that, one for EPP and another one for an open API. And now this is the point where I pull out my phone and I read something from Tim, because Tim unfortunately had to leave. He's saying that it's an effort to keep both the legacy DNS infrastructure providers and more modern agile providers for registries. So that's why there's two camps there. And this is going back to a little bit of Bob's point of our EPP and the wording around it. And then finally, an interface between the information agent and the varying pieces it needs to talk to. Next slide, please. I think it's one of my last slides. Next slide. Thank you. So for the next steps, we have to handle the registrar terminology swap, which we've discussed. And that's mainly an Arch at this point. So, and I'm going to handle that within -26, which is going to come out by the end of the week. And then the draft scope changes. We need to make a decision as a working group. There has been an open question of, if we're going to take the registry document and just make it an architecture document for registries, why isn't that text just in the architecture document? I don't disagree with that, but I think architecture is too far along to add it without causing a massive disruption. So I say leave it alone. What's in architecture is good now, and our work in registries should fix it. Or do we just change the document as I proposed? And I can perform a dry run of this, by the way. I'll make the dry run and send it to the mailing list, not upload it to the data tracker, so people can see it, review it, and be like, is this really what we want? Eric, I'll let you.
Yeah, Eric Vink, the AD for this group. If you change the architecture document, right, like adding new text, we need to redo a last call again.
There is no, for this one, there's no last call. If there's a new content, we will need to have a call for adoption to make sure that the other documents are aligned with what we want.
But we talk about the architecture document.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the architecture document, the modification will be just the altering the terminology to align what the outcome. That's it.
Yeah, that's all I propose we do. But it was said by someone else at some point, why is it just not in there? And I'm arguing, don't do that. Let it keep going. Okay, minimal change.
Okay,
right.
Fair enough.
So I will, if everyone's okay with that, I will put a rough cut of this into the mailing list so people can see the documents, at least in some rough cut form. It won't be complete, but it at least will give people an idea of like, okay, this is what this document would be and this document would be, and a high level look of what the content would be,
Yeah.
but not complete.
Yeah, so just one recommendation, one you
Hi.
will say share the proposed new structure of your, I would say, of the content.
Yep.
Please don't implement any change until we
Yes.
reach a conclusion of there is
Correct.
the right way to go, or we maintain the current document structure, and then we can, because there are other options in order to provide the content and so on.
Correct,
So
right.
please don't implement any change on the
Yeah, I
the
won't
document
make
and
the
wait
changes
for,
to the registry document.
okay,
I-
so, okay,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, there will be a -6 of registries by the end of the week, but they are of the changes for the ODID from the working items previously in this slide. The proposed discussion items will not be done. So, yeah, we can go to the next slide.
Before we go to the next slide, I don't
Sure.
know if we can take
Yeah.
some questions on the registrar or.
Yeah. So, do we have any comments? I have two, but
Let's have this discussion then.
I am in complete agreement that we break this into two documents. It is going to become unwieldy otherwise. And we can then get the implementation specific part well done as we get the architecture out for how the registry works in the process. We separate process from implementation, I think is what it is, correct?
Correct, yes.
Jim?
Jim Reed, just to say what Bob said, I think this is the right way to go forward. And we also need to think later on, perhaps there might be new ways of doing the updates to the database that may not be documented right now. So we then don't want to have to go back and change existing, almost historical documents at that point to accommodate a new style of authentication or updating of the database. That could be done as a separate standalone document. So I think concentrate on getting the roles and responsibilities sorted out. The first thing,
Yep.
document that, explain how the pieces fit together.
Yes,
But the mechanisms for how those pieces fit together can be documented separately.
yes, that's exactly what the registry document would become, and then the implementation documents would be spawned from it.
So myself, I have one comment. I saw .ICAO.
The
And so-
ICAO. Yeah, okay, so this is a, I'll let Bob mention this. 'cause
Well,
he has a little bit more.
actually, Jim and I need some serious discussion about the realities of of what's in DNS. So Jim and I have not had the opportunity to sit down
Okay.
prior to this meeting. Hopefully this evening, we will be able to find the time and go through it. I know what I want to accomplish. Jim knows what the reality out there is, and we'll come to a meeting of minds and then post it on the list. But fortunately, the two of us, and this is why I love the face-to-face, the two of us can find a room, we can sit down with the paper and draw it out and then come back to you that we would not have been able to effectively do even over Zoom. So please stay tuned. This is for Jim and I to beat up, and maybe Rob will join us as well. Yeah, yeah, I will, we'll find a place and I'll post where we're going to be hiding.
Okay.
Yes.
My concern is also not only whether ICAO is aware of, but regarding the IETF, is it fine that we define a route that is very specific?
Okay, before I let Bob or Jim say anything, I want the registry document, in whatever words we need to word it, to say you can choose whatever level
Okay.
core is to the right of what where we would end, right? So we've specified det and then stuff and .mfr and stuff. But anything to the right of that dot, choose what you want, right?
Okay.
If it's in .ICAO, if it's in ICAO.int, if it's
Okay.
in remote ID.arrow, as in my implementation right now has, in .example.com, don't care, right? So I want to make sure that that's in the draft.
But in the implementation, for a lot of reasons, there will be the one for the prefix that it's assigned. This is how it's going to be. So at some point in the implementation, there will be a nailing it down. This prefix relates to this FQDN tree.
It's a registry made in the DRIP registry architecture document that says this IPv6 ORCID prefix equals this root FQDN top level domain, however you want to call it. Yes.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I mean, be short, Jim.
Just very, very short, 2 points.
Mhm.
First of all, is to answer the question of saying, do we have any special IETF process to go through? The answer to that is it depends. It depends what the choice of the name is going to be. Second thing is, please don't talk about this as being a root. Call it an apex. That prefix is it's an apex. The root has got another context in the DNS, and we're not talking about the DNS root.
I hate the term root. Please sit with me and figure out what to call it because I don't know.
Zone apex is the terminology from the DNS.
Okay. Noted.
So let's move. We have 9 minutes left. So
We have 9
go.
minutes. Okay, so to wrap up, we had a hackathon for us, for DRIP. We brought together and we did with Info Networks, we created live registration with the AX implementation, which is sitting on the bench right there, which I won't show here, but I'll be at Hackdemo Happy Hour, making session IDs live, many of them, and putting them into the broadcast puck, broadcasting them, picking them up with the AX implementation app, receiver app, which all of us have, and doing the lookups in the DNS and getting stuff back out. So we have a live working demonstration. And this is just a visualization of what that is. So with that, I am done. And I'll hand it over to Andre to talk about his implementation stuff, I think. Thank you.
Go ahead, Andre.
Hello, can you hear well?
Yeah, perfect.
I don't have a slides, but I shared the link to our testbed and code release in the chat list. So if you just click, you can see our flying drone carrying Raspberry Pi 4, which is including DRIP code and transmitter via GPS and battery. And our also public code release includes Android app based on Open Drone ID, as well as backend, which is based on some database server, which is not currently following the registry document. We also have alternative implementation based on Iroha blockchain, which is documented in the article. So there is a pointer there as well. And there is also OpenHeap release, which is kind of tested, and it can be used to generate this drone ID tags. And so welcome to download our code and test it. And hopefully in future, we can also try interops with Adam's release. So hopefully everybody found the URL. If there are any questions or comments, I can answer.
Any comments? Stu is running to the mic.
So to Andre and your students, thank you. And to everyone else, Adam and I deeply regret that our sponsors do not permit us to openly share our code. And I refight that fight monthly, but every month I lose. So sorry, and thank you, Andre.
You're most welcome. And in the autumn, we are going to have another iteration and a fresh release for the latest specs, maybe network controlled ID and other drafts that we are running with Bob.
Okay. So do we have, so if we have 5 minutes, I'm just gonna give a 30-second comment. Is that in your presentation, you're mentioning that, so Adam, it's back to the DNS. I mean, once you own a DNS, I think you can provide whatever service you want behind. There is nothing you're related to ICANN. So sometime, but I'm sure Jim is gonna clarify that for you, but sometimes I have the impression we see a problem where there are no problems.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is you can pretty much do what you want once you've got the control of a particular domain name, and you don't need to talk to anybody else about that. I think it's also unhelpful at the moment to try and think of this in terms of the ICANN registrar model. I don't see there'll be a need, for example, to pay a fee every time you register a name associated with a particular UAV. I don't think that model is ever going to fly, excuse the pun. So I don't think we have to worry about that.
Okay, perfect. So anyone wants to add something? Bob?
If we have 2 minutes, I want to point people to the NetRid draft that we're finished, that hopefully we finish this work. What's the next activity for this group? We need to be ahead of everybody else and get the network remote ID work in place so that we are leading network remote ID and not trying to catch up and fitting in with what some people think it should be, and they don't do the job securely right. So I want people to start looking at it, start thinking about it, because that should be our next activity, gearing up for 115.
Okay. James, please. Do you want to speak? If you're speaking, we don't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me. Okay, good. Yeah, in reviewing the registry draft, I noticed that there needs to be work done on the EPP and the RDAP side. And I talked to Scott Hollenbeck. He had offered to help with that. So I highly recommend that you reach out to him on that. And that was it.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Med, for James Gould. Yeah. So I think unless we have a very last comment, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and make sure the draft are sent to the RFC editor in the next 2 weeks. Another comment, I'd like all the conversation to be on the mailing list. That would be very helpful. At least don't include, I mean, if you want to send something to me, I am on the mailing list. Right, I think we're done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. On progresse contrairement à ce que tu penses.
Non, mais je vois, mais...
Non, on progresse.
Merci pour la correction, mais je n'ai pas compris le...
L'architecture, et c'est sûr que les gens vont, tu vas encore redire, bah, vous avez déjà un document d'architecture, pourquoi encore vous venez avec un document fixe pour l'enregistrement. Mais bon, le plus important, c'est déjà de focaliser, parce que ce qu'ils avaient, c'était incompréhensible, ça a été des interfaciers, un machin, etc. Donc, on s'aperçoit de l'importance de s'ouvrir aux autres, qu'ils comprennent qu'est-ce qu'on met dans le document. Et donc, pour moi, s'ils réduisent le scope, parce que les trucs sont vraiment compréhensibles, c'est déjà un bon. Voilà, c'est déjà pas mal. Et après, il faut envoyer le truc à DNSOP, il faut envoyer le truc aussi à RAA, etc.